Welcome into this Friday edition of Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery. Today on the show, just say no to Jimmy G. The Braves have to get off to a fast start before taking on the Mets, and it's all part of the plan. We'll talk about all of that. It's Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.
This is Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery, part of Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it starts now.
Welcome into this Friday edition of Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Head to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta in the search browser, find our page, hit the subscribe button, leave us a comment. Of course, we're free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify and Odyssey. Give us a 5-star review, and then also give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. So we got a report, I guess it was yesterday that we got this report that said that the Falcons are one of 5 teams that have reached out or talked to the 49ers about getting their hands on Jimmy Garoppolo, right? Now, I'm just curious, is this coming from the same blue checkmark media that told me a few weeks ago that Arch Manning's decision was down to either Georgia or Alabama, or the same blue checkmark media that told me that John Collins would get traded on draft night? And, well, no. John Collins is going to get traded. It's just, it may not be draft night, but John Collins is going to. Is that the same report from all the same blue checkmark media? Seems to be a pattern of, again, in the words of Gorilla Monsoon, a fountain of misinformation. But let's run with it for a minute here. Okay. Can I ask a dumb question? Why would the Falcons make a run at Jimmy Garoppolo? Now, I'll say it like this, and I'm going to go against everything I've always preached about your 53-man NFL roster. Is Jimmy Garoppolo a better quarterback than anything you have on the roster right now? Yes, he is. Okay. So shouldn't that automatically, because I believe in the Bill Parcells theory, if you can improve any spot on your 53-man roster, you always go on in improvement. In this case, though, it doesn't seem to make any sense. It goes counterintuitive to everything that the Falcons have been doing this offseason. With all due respect, if you wanted to make a move for Jimmy Garoppolo, you'd have done that before the draft, right? It's not like Jimmy Garoppolo hasn't been a guy who wouldn't be available if the right trade offer came along. And I understand the 49ers position of, we're not going to get rid of Jimmy. We have it budgeted. We don't have any dead money attached to him to cut him. We can ride this thing out and see what happens. And maybe a team has an injury and this, that, and the other, right? But if the Falcons were truly and really interested in bringing Garoppolo in, you'd have done that before the draft, because it would have certainly affected the way you went about drafting. Because what sense does it make to have signed Mariota to a multi-year deal, and the rationale and reasoning is behind he's going to be the bridge because he's worked with Arthur Smith, played in his offense, knows the system, and then spent a 3rd-round draft pick? And while that's not high capital for a quarterback, you can find a lot of value in a 3rd-round player on your roster. If you're smart and you're a good NFL front office, 3rd-round draft picks are valuable pieces. You can find a starting defensive tackle, a starting middle linebacker, a starting offensive lineman, a starting running back. You can find a guy who'll come in and start for your team right away. So it makes no sense, and it's counterintuitive to, okay, let's roll the dice for a year on Jimmy Garoppolo and evaluate if we want him. There's nothing about that makes any sense for the Falcons, both from a financial and football standpoint. Now, we'll talk a little bit more about the football aspect of this, but first I want to talk to you about my friends at betonline.net. We've been talking about these folks all the time here on the show. Betonline.net is your number one source for all your betting needs and sports information. A lot of things going on. Look, MLB started back up in the second half last night, right? Braves are cranking it up. What a great matchup tonight. We're going to talk a little bit more about this in the next segment. Angels, Braves, Ohtani on the mound. Maybe you want some action on all of that. Braves about to get things really cranked up here in the second half. You got all kinds of different sports going on. MMA, boxing, golf is still cranking things up. We got the FedEx tournament at at East Lake coming up. I mean, a lot of things going on in the world of sports. You want to get in on the action. BetOnline.net is your best source for all your sports wagering information, live betting, esports, scores, and more. Easy to use. Put the app on your mobile device. Find information about the trends, podcast information, all kinds of action and wagering information. BetOnline.net is where the game starts. Now, if you wanted to bring Garoppolo in, again, it doesn't make sense from the football aspect of giving Desmond Ridder any sort of chance at this point to do anything. You don't trade for Jimmy Garoppolo to play Desmond Ridder. You don't trade for Jimmy Garoppolo to have a quarterback competition. You don't do that at all. And miss me with the whole, well, Russell Wilson and they signed, who was the guy that they signed or whatever, miss me with all that. That almost never happens in the league. You're not going to give up draft capital or anything like that to bring a Garoppolo in to let him compete, especially for a guy, with all due respect, who's been a Super Bowl quarterback. Yeah, Matt Flynn. Sorry, that's the guy. So you paid Matt Flynn a bunch of money. Matt Flynn won a Super Bowl quarterback, national championship quarterback, but not a Super Bowl quarterback like Jimmy Garoppolo. Jimmy Garoppolo is a starter in the NFL. He's not some ham and egger hanging on for dear life. Is he a great starter? No, but he is a starter in the NFL. Given the landscape of starting quarterbacks in the NFL, he's a starter. And by the way, why would you try a guy out for you? Oh, let me mention real quick, too. Did you see Kyler Murray's deal yesterday? I'm old enough to remember when y'all told me that you can't build rosters around $40 million quarterbacks. And he just out Deshaun Watson. Instead of $46 million a year, was $46.1 million per year. Oh, okay. Is there any quarterback who's not making $40 million this year? But that's okay. Listen, I understand. We all make mistakes, and y'all do, with everything. But unfortunately, life in the NFL is you're going to have to build rosters around $40 million quarterbacks. Side discussion on everything, but that's okay. I don't forget those kinds of things when I was told, about all that. Anyway, so it doesn't make a lot of football sense to bring Garoppolo in here and try him out. Stick to the plan. Falcons have a plan. Now, look, if Desmond Ridder doesn't work out, and let's say, my buddy Randy McMichael was asking me this yesterday when we were wrapping up at SEC Media Days. If Desmond Ridder sort of plays well and you have a top 3 pick, and do you draft quarterback? Yeah. I'm okay with drafting Young or Stroud if I can get my hands on one of those guys, right? You take the top guy at that position and roll the dice on, even if Ridder plays well. Because let's be honest, you are not going to have a closed book on Desmond Ridder after 1 year of partially playing. You're not going to have the script written on what Desmond Ridder is or is not after 1 year, where he's probably not going to start the year at quarterback. So there's no chance on earth that you have a complete book on what Desmond Ridder is. So that shouldn't preclude you from drafting a quarterback. But from the plan of what this team is trying to do, from a football and financial sense, it doesn't make sense to go after Garoppolo. Doesn't make sense to trade for him and give up assets. Doesn't make sense to bring him in on the roster. It doesn't make sense to try to look at signing him long-term and this, that, and the other. It doesn't. And if you were going to do this, this would have only made sense, again, before the draft, like they did with Mariota. That's when it would have made sense is, okay, let's get us a bridge guy. We can still maybe draft a quarterback or whatever. Maybe we draft a guy later in the draft. It just, when I look at these things, and I understand the reason that the Falcons are getting linked into this is because they don't have a solution at quarterback. And in the NFL, if you don't have a solution for quarterback, you have to go out and find that guy, draft, free agency, or whatever. So while I understand the link to the story, from a financial football roster management sense, it makes no sense to bring Jimmy Garoppolo in here. All right, when we come back, the Braves need to get off to a fast start. We're coming close to having to start lining up against the New York Mets. We'll talk about that next. Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery. Back with you on Hitting Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Head to youtube.com. Locked On Sports Atlanta needs to go into your search browser, and when you find our page, hit that subscribe button, leave us a comment there. Free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify and Odyssey. 5-star review is there. give me a follow on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. Braves get things cranked up here as the quote-unquote second half of the season gets underway, although the Braves are 56-38, so we're well past the actual halfway point of the season. But we've talked before about how when we get into early August, because starting August 4th, the Braves will have a 5-game stretch. That's right, 5 games against the Mets. And then in the middle of the month, the 15th through the 18th, the Braves have another 4-game stretch. So from August 4th to August 18th, the Braves are going to play the Mets 9 times. Okay? Now, I do firmly believe, obviously, that that is where the division is really going to try to get settled. But leading up to that, starting tonight, and then all the way up to August 3rd, the final game that they'll play against Philadelphia. We'll talk about that here in just a second. The Braves have a 3-game series against the California Angels, and I call them the California Angels. I don't care if you like it or not. I grew up as the California Angels. Gene Autry named them that. I'm going to name them that. They have 3 games in Philadelphia, 3 games at home with Arizona, and then a 2-game set at home with Philadelphia before they head to Gotham for that 5-game set. Now, when you look at the standings right now, obviously the Braves themselves are sitting 2.5 games back. So through all the different kinds of machinations and stuff like that over the last couple of weeks after that big long winning streak the Braves had, the division has stayed pretty flat and pretty quiet. But this is a real chance, even before you get to being up in New York for 5 games, that you can either really make sure that you make some hay in the division, or at least keep everything close to the vest and keep everything where it is, so that you know going into the Mets series that that division can turn during that series. You're playing some really bad teams, okay? The Angels right now are 39-53. They don't have Mike Trout. I understand tonight's a fantastic matchup, right? Morton against Ohtani, right? Ohtani's, one of the great stories and great players in baseball, MVP last year. So the coolness effect is there. But the Angels in reality are not a good baseball team. They've gotten very little offensive production. Trout is out. Rendon's been a disaster. Ohtani's got really good numbers, but he's not enough to carry that team by itself. So you can certainly make some hay here at home against the Angels. And then you had 2 Philadelphia. Then we talked about 2 at home with Philadelphia. So 5 games against the Phillies. I know the Phillies are above 500, but you are 4-3 against the Phillies this year. And let's be realistic. They don't have Bryce Harper right now. They're not the same team. If you go look at their run record-wise, a lot of their guys have not performed since Harper has been out, and he's not going to come back anytime real soon. So there's a real chance to either knock the Phillies out of this thing, which is realistic because you start beating up on the Phillies and that season goes sideways, they're going to be out of it. But more importantly is that you beat one more team in your division that doesn't make it feel like that they can come and try to move up on you. You don't want to narrow that gap between you and Philadelphia. There's a nice separation between the Braves and Philadelphia right now. 6 games between the Braves and Phillies right now. Braves are 2.5 out of the division lead. Phillies are 8.5 games out of the division lead. So you beat them up, and you've already, at least handled your business against them so far this season. And then you get the low-life, dirtbag, fleabag Arizona Diamondbacks, who are 40-52. As crazy as it is, they have one more win than the California Angels do this year. They're a last-place team. Now, we'll talk more about this here in just a second, but want to talk to you about my folks over at Built Bar, Built.com. Built Bar, man, listen, they sent us a care package here last week, I guess it was. And when I tell you, I wanted to try, I'm not a s'more guy, right? So I'm not big on s'mores. I think making s'mores and eating them, I think it's for 9-year-olds, right? But I wanted to try the s'more Built Bar. And of course, the puff, right? The marshmallow puff, the protein-infused marshmallow, the puffs that they have. Love the puffs, love the concept of it. I tried that s'more. Can I tell you, like, I am sold on it? That made me want to go out and cook some s'mores to it. I love the s'more flavor. I love just the taste of it, the flavor, and the mix of the chocolate and the marshmallow and everything along with it. I can't recommend enough the s'more. And I've tried a few different ones. Look, the new flavor out right now is the coconut brownie chunk, right? That's the new one, coconut brownie chunk. It's great too. Tried that one the other day as well. But I got to tell you, I love the s'more. I want you to go to built.com, okay? Built.com is your place to go. Check out all of their line of protein bars. Again, the puffs, which are the protein-infused marshmallows out there. You're going to love the selection that they have out there. I highly recommend the s'mores out there. But here's what we got going on, okay? You're going to go around and say, man, I got to get an order of some of this stuff. I got to put some of this stuff together, right? Go to built.com. Put your order together. When you get to the checkout, I want you to use LOCKED15, LOCKED, the number 1, the number 5, LOCKED15 as the promo code at checkout. LOCKED15, and you're going to get 15% off of that order. 15% off of your order at built.com when you use the promo code LOCK15. Put your order together, head there today, and I highly recommend the s'mores puffs out there. Trust me. I'm a guy who hasn't missed a whole lot of meals and tried a lot of different things. You're going to enjoy that immensely. Now, again, as we said, this is a real chance for the Braves to catch some ground and make up some ground against the New York Mets. And while I understand it's only 2.5 games, you really don't want to make this thing where you get on any sort of extended losing streak, right? And you find yourself in a position where you're having to win a whole bunch of games against the New York Mets. Now, what's good for the Braves in this stretch as well is the Mets starting tonight. They have a home series against the San Diego Padres and a home series against the New York Yankees. So 3 at home with San Diego, 2 at home with the New York Yankees. Well, the Yankees have been the best team in baseball thus far. San Diego is still one of the best teams in the National League, okay? They're 10 games above 500, been pretty average in their last 10, 4-6 in their last 10. And then the Mets get back to playing all the dirt bags of the world. The Marlins, the Nationals, 3 in Miami, 3 in Washington before they play the Braves. So this is a chance, again, for the Braves to really squeeze. We talk about when you're in Major League Baseball, you have to look at the schedule in terms of little chunks and bits and bites and things like that. And the Braves have a chance that, who knows? Look, Mets don't take care of their business, and Scherzer's going to start tonight. Mets don't take care of their business against San Diego and New York. This division could start to flip a little bit because I do think the Braves will handle the Angels. They'll certainly handle the Fleabag Arizona Diamondbacks. And I think as long as they can, stay above, 5 games, if you go 3-2 against the Phillies, I'll take that. I'll take that because that puts Phillies even behind another game, behind you or what have you. So this, again, is another good stretch for the Atlanta Braves to both make up a little bit of ground, keep pace in the division, and then get yourself ready. Because I'm telling you, that series in August, to me, we talk about pendulum shifts and things like that here on the show. That, to me, that 9 games that they play through the early and middle part of August is really going to say a lot about the division. Because you're going to have 9 games against the Mets in a very short amount of time, right? It's going to be a whole bunch. When you have a 5-game series against one team on the road, brother, that's big in baseball. And again, because of the shortened spring and the condensed schedule and blah, 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 you have all these weird kind of scheduling quirks that are going to happen. And that's where the Braves are. 9 games starting on August 4th through just, not quite the end of the month, but through the middle of the month. But this stretch right now, where you have an opportunity to get yourself and to make some hay against, let's face it, some low-life teams and some teams that are not really in it. And again, a team like Philadelphia that doesn't have their superstar player. The Angels don't have their superstar player. You've got 3, 6, 8, 11 games before you see the Mets that it's another chance to get yourself on a good winning streak. All right, when we come back, this is all part of the plan. I'll explain what I mean next. It's Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery. Back with you on Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery here on Locked On Sports Atlanta, asking you to head to youtube.com, put Locked On Sports Atlanta in the search browser. When you get there, hit that subscribe button. Leave us a comment there, free and available too on all your favorite podcast platforms, including Spotify and Odyssey. 5-star review us, of course. Leave us a comment and follow me on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. Yesterday, we got news that the Atlanta Falcons had put Deion Jones on the PUP list, right? Physically unable to perform list right now, PUP list. Now, it is a little bit different here. We'll explain that in just a second. But do you remember The Dark Knight? Okay, so Deion Jones had a cleanup shoulder procedure, and we talked about this. And I remember some of the comments about, because I said this was all timed out perfectly, right? Like this could have been done right after the season was over with. And it would have been done and over and this, that, and the other. But they timed it out so that as they went through OTAs and mandatory minis, that they didn't have to ask questions about a guy who may or may not be on the roster. And let's face it, during that time, there's no bigger story to talk about, to be honest with you, than talking about will Deion be there or not be there. And some of y'all told me, yeah, it's not right. No, you had to. Okay, they could have done this at any time. They could have done this in March. Okay, they could have done this in February. It didn't just develop that, I got to get my shoulder cleaned up now. Okay, so now putting him on the PUP list right as we're starting training camp. Okay, you remember the Dark Knight? Okay, remember what the Joker said? It's all part of the plan. It's all part of the plan. Okay, that's what this is. Miss me with the he's not. Miss me with all of that. There's no random happenstance, whatever, just random thing that happens with an NFL team. They have a game plan. They have a purpose. They have a meaning behind what they do. They don't just whimsically do things for the sake of doing it. It's just timed itself out that way. They're doing this to give them time for two things. Number one is evaluate what they have at middle linebacker, right? And I've talked about that is going to be, for me, that's my number two thing I'm watching. Right tackle number one, middle linebacker number two. That's the second battle I want to watch through training camp is what do they look like at middle linebacker? This gives them a chance to try out the Kiewikowskis and the Evans and the Troy Andersons, right? And see if maybe Michael Walker can fit in that. This is their chance to evaluate without having to worry about Deion Jones being there. It also is giving them time to seek out trade partners for Deion Jones. They're going to seek out a trade partner, okay? I don't have to be part of the blue checkmark media to understand the idea that Deion Jones is a guy who doesn't completely fit into what their defensive scheme is, okay? I can watch him on the field and understand, maybe that's not quite the best look and maybe he doesn't quite fit for what they want to do. So, look, and again, I don't really know what they're going to get or what's available out there for Deion Jones or what a trade package could look like. I don't really care. If you feel like he's not part of your system and you don't feel like you want to pay $20 whatever million, and I understand it's locked in stone, but if you don't want to pay it, find a partner, find a dance partner, figure out, move on. Okay, despite what they want to tell you, they're in the rebuild, retool, reorganize, function their roster, whatever it is that you want to reuse as far as a term for the roster goes. Okay. But this is perfectly planned. And by the way, PUP list in training camp means he can come back at any time. Okay. He can come back at any time. Now, look, the reality is you don't save a roster spot in all this. And I'll explain that here in just a second. But let me first talk about my friends over at Coffee AM, coffeeam.com. Listen, the best small batch roaster of coffee in the country, right here in the state of Georgia, up in Canton. Coffeeam.com is the place to go. I was just talking to Jarvis off air about this. I'm not really a big flavored coffee guy, but I love their flavored coffee. And the smell and the aroma that comes, just listen, you can go to the store and get all these air fresheners and all these other kinds of crazy things, fakakta things, Febrezes and all this kind of, hell, just dump coffee on your furniture. Why spray your couch with Febreze? Spread their coffee on it. It smells even better. I love these folks at Coffee AM. I drink it every single morning. They got the K-Cups. They got the organic. They got the fair trade. They got the flavored. They got the dark roast. They got the whatever you want. It's all at coffeeam.com. Check out their website, coffeeam.com. Find a list, big menu full of coffees, teas, gift sets, everything there for all of your coffee drinking needs. And I got a special deal for you, okay, for our Locked On Sports Atlanta listeners. Use the coupon code Locked On. Once you put that first order together, use that coupon code Locked On, LOCKEDON, at your checkout, and you're going to get 15% off that first order of coffee, teas, and gift sets, okay? So whatever it is, you go through the thing, you find a couple different products, beep, bada, boop, bop, bop. Hey, I'm at checkout now. Oh, I got this code Locked On, LOCKEDON, and I'm going to get you 15% off that first order. Coffees, teas, gift sets, whatever. I love these folks. I drink their coffee every single morning. I'm telling you, I'm living proof about how good it is. And again, listen, forget the Febreze, get a gift box, and just dump the coffee grounds right on your couch. It'll smell much better for it. Coffee AM, the best small batch coffee roaster in America. So the thing about putting him on the PUP list is it's not like they gain any advantage. He still counts as a roster spot because you're in training camp. So it's not like when you put a guy on the PUP list, okay, there are requirements about when he can come back, but you don't lose a roster spot, okay? He still counts toward the roster. So there's no advantage, if you will, from a roster manipulation standpoint, because they have 89 guys on roster, and the reason they have one open spot is because Goldman retired rather than suit up. So he counts on the roster, and he can come back at any time. But they conveniently put him on the PUP list because, I don't know, if you didn't put him on the PUP list and he doesn't show up to training camp, then what do you say? Now you start answering questions, okay? And the Falcons don't want to have to get into this game of, oh, will Deion be here, not be here? We all know what the deal is on all this. So I know some of you are going to say in the comments, a conspiracy. No, it's not. This is business, folks. This is how you do business. You manipulate these things. You knew his shoulder procedure needed to be done, and it was a simple cleanup, but you timed it just right then. Oh, yeah, I know the OTAs and mandatory minutes are about to start, but oh, yeah, Deion's got to get his shoulder cleaned up. Well, why didn't you do it in February when you knew, so you'd be ready for, well, harumph, okay? Now you put him on the PUP list, even though you gain no roster advantage to it, okay? And you don't have to worry about him being there, and he doesn't have to answer questions about training camp, because guess what? The rookie's already there. Guess what? The Falcons have, in a few days, all the veterans start reporting to training camp. Oh, well, yeah, he's not quite ready to go yet. Okay. When will he be ready to go when magically he gets traded to another team and all of a sudden he'll show up at training camp? Because that's the nice thing about the PUP list at this time of year. He can show up anytime through training camp. You don't have to wait. He can show up. He can be on the PUP list today, on the roster tomorrow. And again, he still counts towards your 90-man roster. So again, to quote the Joker in The Dark Knight, it's all part of the plan. It gives the Falcons an opportunity to evaluate the other middle linebackers on their roster and continue to look and seek out trade partners and figure out what they are going to do. Me personally, what I'm going to tell you, and I'm going to go ahead and, since every other blue checkmark media guy, since I don't have a blue checkmark, every other blue checkmark media guy that just throws crap at a wall that has no truth behind it, I'm going to go ahead and give my hot take. Deion's not going to be here. Deion Jones is not going to be an Atlanta Falcon. When the Falcons line up week 1 in the regular season of the NFL, Deion Jones will not be here any longer. I don't think he fits what they want to do. I don't think he's part of the plan. I think that they look at some of the other guys that they have, and they're going to give those guys a shot, and they fit more from the physical and size and everything sense of what they want to do. And I think Deion, I don't know if he's going to get cut or he's going to get traded. If you get cut, you still got to eat all the money, but that's okay. They're in cap purgatory for this year anyway. At least it'll get it off the books and things like that. But Deion Jones won't be here when this roster gets cranked up. And when they line up week 1 in the NFL season, he will not be part of all of that. But this PUP list thing, it wouldn't mean anything normally, but it's all part of the plan. Thanks for listening in. Another week in the books. We appreciate you so much for making Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery your first listen every day. Make my friends over at ATL Day Ones your second listen every day. My friends Jarvis Davis and Tanitra Batiste talking about all things in the heart of the city of Atlanta. Got you covered with all the local teams, Hawks, Braves, Dogs, Falcons. It's all right there. Free and available on our YouTube page at Locked On Sports Atlanta. Also free and available on all your favorite podcast platforms. 5-star review us when you get there. And, of course, follow me on my personal Twitter page at JMCH316. We will talk to you on Monday. Have a great weekend. It's been Hittin' Hard with Jon Chuckery on Locked On Sports Atlanta.